Jamie Alexander here with Broadcast Beat. We're at 2017 SMPTE. I'm here with the man of the hour, the keynote speaker of this morning. Andrew, how are you?
Good, thanks. How are you?
I'm great, thanks. I'm happy to be here, as you can tell.
I can tell.
So please, you had an amazing keynote speech this morning. For those of us that missed it, please tell us what you went over in that.
Sure. So initially the concept was to kind of talk about VR, but VR is such a narrow sliver of the big picture. So we talked about VR and AR and mixed reality and kind of how those overlap with traditional content and how those overlap with esports, gaming, and the kind of gamification of movies. I think there's kind of like we're at a rare watershed moment right now where we have the kind of crumbling of older technologies. The studio system is breaking. It's still kind of like there's like on its last legs in a lot of ways. And that's good and bad because there's so many great things that legacy has created that it was sort of a charge to find new ways of bringing that success into the future of how this kind of new part of the business is shaping. And I think that there's a lot of focus on what is VR and is it the future? And I think it's a slice, it's part of it, but it's really kind of an integrated approach to traditional content that we've been doing, the kind of gaming, esports, live streaming, all that kind of stuff fits into the profile of what the new hybridized version of the future is.
I totally understand. So every year we come, we are always, it seems like in this industry we're always trying to catch up with ourselves.
Right.
So within the next 5 years, how do you see being able to keep up? Because if the new software that was new like last year is barely holding up now, what are we going to do within the next few years?
Well, I think that's why this is such a watershed moment, because like somebody asked at the end, sort of like where is mentorship? How do people learn if it's so new? And the reality is we're all kind of coming to this fresh, but there's a version of what SMPTE users come to it with, and there's another version of what gamers come to it with, and version of what studio people come to it with, and everyone kind of has their own unique brand. And so I think the idea is to kind of prototype what those relationships look like and how they integrate together. It's not that gaming is the future, or that VR is the future, or that movies are the future, or that movies aren't the future. I think it's kind of about shaping out and prototyping now what is a modular version of the future. And I think that the watershed part of it is how many opportunities that this creates for interconnectivity. Because what hasn't happened before, technology is new and it's really about story, but what's really new is how global and how interactive it is. So it allows people from distant locations to connect, and that will change no matter what the technology is.
Absolutely. Well, kind of like this event here, where do you find the value in coming to an event like SMPTE?
Well, first of all, it's a great group, and I have a lot of friends here, and I think that it's an important, I think SMPTE as a standards institution is, set the bar, continues to set the bar. They set the bar way back when with Leader and with Test Ribbon and the idea of, all the amazing things that they've done. And I think that it's interesting to look at standards in an industry that's so new. And it's interesting because on the one hand, you have to there has to be some format that we're delivering. There has to be some color information. There has to be some fidelity. We have to have benchmarks. At the same time, you want to leave it open enough that those things the market can kind of determine what those things are. So I think the charge today was to kind of take all the lessons learned, positive and negative, and use those to tell the story of where this is going, as opposed to stamping a new codec or a delivery format or something like that. The idea is to kind of prototype what the future looks like using the best of what's come before.
Brilliant and so well put. Thank you very much. Is there anything else that you would like to share with us about maybe what you're excited to see while you're here for the rest of the event?
The symposium yesterday was great, the AI symposium. It's a funny thing because my background as a cinematographer has all been so kind of visually driven, but really where this business is going, one of the kind of maybe controversial things that I was saying in the keynote is that I'm kind of handing over a lot of my role as a cinematographer to the user because they decide where to look and they decide what to avoid and they find the story. And we have to be able to tell stories that are interactive enough that people can find that because that is part of the completion of there's a fulfillment kind of legacy there. And so the way that data and analytics and the kind of predictive metrics fit into that is pivotal. And that's why I think SMPTE is so important because we have to kind of prototype how all these things fit together. It's not that suddenly there's a new Blackmagic camera or suddenly we have 8K. It's really more about how do these things play together and how does it allow people globally to interact in new ways.
How fun. And for that, it sounds like you have to be ever evolving.
Yeah, I think we all do.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. Well, thank you so much for spending
Thank
time
you.
with us.
Thank you for having me.
All right.
It's a pleasure.
Absolutely.